Second, internationally, for the preparation for war, doesn't mean we're going to have war, but to be prepared for war and to have a type of war with the rising power, China, and then its allies, China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea are considered that other side in that direction. The idea of the United States dominating and being so controlling is no longer going to be the case.
Ray Dalio is an American investor, hedge fund manager, and author, best known as the founder of Bridgewater Associates. Born in 1949, Ray Dalio built his career on a deep understanding of economic cycles, financial markets, and global macro trends, which he has applied to both investing and policymaking insights. Beyond finance, Ray Dalio is known for his studies on economic history and geopolitical shifts. He has written extensively on the rise and decline of nations, the changing global order, and the financial consequences of power struggles. His book, Principles for Dealing with the Changing World Order, explores how economic and political cycles throughout history shape the future of global power dynamics, with a focus on the competition between the United States and China. In recent months, Ray Dalio has warned about preparing for war amidst shifting geopolitical alignments and power struggles, particularly between the United States and China. He sees history repeating itself in the cycle of rising and declining global powers. His analysis is rooted in historical patterns where dominant nations face challenges from emerging powers, often leading to conflicts. He argues that the current trajectory between the US and China resembles past instances where economic, military, and ideological rivalries escalated into significant confrontations. Ray Dalio observes that China is rapidly asserting itself as a global superpower, challenging the long-standing dominance of the United States in key areas such as trade, technology, and military influence. As China continues to expand its global reach through economic initiatives like the Belt and Road Project and advancements in artificial intelligence, semiconductors, and military technology, the U.S. has responded by strengthening alliances, imposing trade restrictions, and increasing its military presence in Asia. These actions, coupled with nationalistic sentiments in both countries, create an environment where tensions could escalate into conflict. In a recent interview with Tom Bilyeu, Ray Dalio points to escalating geopolitical tensions and, in particular, U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to impose a 10% tariff on all Chinese imports as a key catalyst for potential economic turbulence. He believes the latest round of tariffs could escalate trade tensions between the world's two largest economies, leading to supply chain disruptions, inflationary shocks, and retaliatory measures from Beijing. Given the interconnected nature of global markets, such a scenario could contribute to heightened volatility. As we present key moments from Ray Dalio's interview, we invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Also, if you find this content valuable, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. We appreciate your support and hope you enjoy the video.
Everything that happens has causes to make it happen, and so it's like a machine. And so there are five major forces that work together to determine how this thing works. The changing world order. The world order is changing. Those five forces are first a money, credit, money, debt force. In other words, the way that works is you get credit, that's buying power, it produces debt, you have to pay it back. But the buying produces economic output. So there's that cycle. You have too much debt. The second one that you're talking about is the internal order and disorder, changing domestic order. And as you point out, traditionally there's the left and the right, and that's Democrats and Republicans. And there are times when they're very, very different, and they're fighting to win at all cost. And that can be disruptive, and how that works is important. The third one is the international order. There's a system have how countries operate with each other. That's the order. And there's a dynamic for that. Number four is acts of nature. Droughts, floods, and pandemics are a force, a big force. Nature is a big force. And so climate change and so on is important. And number five is technology. Man's inventiveness that produces technologies, they have an effect. And they all interact. So what you've done and you've brought us back to what is the most consequential development of that second force, this internal order and disorder. Fortunately, we had a situation where there's a fairly clear mandate and they were not arguing about the elections. So we've had an orderly transition of power from the left, the Democrats and so on, to rather hard right. And so what does that represent is your question. That represents two important forces. I'll say them, give the headlines and then go below that. The first, in reforms, internal reforms, to reform the government and to reform the country in certain ways that I'll get into in a second. And second, internationally, for the preparation for war. Doesn't mean we're going to have war, but to be prepared for war and to have a type of war with the rising power, China, and then its allies, China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea are considered that other side. You're going to see the country run and the government run a lot more like a capitalist business in which imagine a new leader comes in and you have an old company that's not doing so well. Maybe that's IBM or Boeing or something. And they're coming in and they're doing a renovation. And so you're going to see technologies be used. You're going to see a game plan develop to make the government run in a more efficient and cost-efficient way. And you're going to see what we call an industrial policy, which is a policy for the country, the business, to operate that rather than a purely free market economy. In other words, it'll have direction. You're going to see deregulation. You're going to see changes in legislation. You're going to see an emphasis for it to be productive and to be effective with an eye on what that means internationally and the competition. For example, in technology, you either win the technology war or you lose the technology war. The technology war means if you win it economically. Well, whoever the winner is will win it economically and will win it militarily. So that internationally, we have that same competition. That changes the role of the United States. We have an America First policy, okay? No longer the world order as it was. The world order as it was after World War II was that how do we work with each other in those countries? What are the rules? And establishing a rule-based, what we would say also a moral-driven type of world order in which there are multinational organizations such as the United Nations, the World Bank, the World Trade Organization, the IMF, and all those organizations operating by a set of rules. That's obsolete now. We now have an America First policy in which then other countries then are increasingly pressured to be with us or against us. And now you're seeing this line up in preparation for what side are you on? So that is the change that we're going to see. And we are in the process of developing.
Ray Dalio argues that global politics is becoming increasingly fragmented, with the United States potentially losing its position as the world's sole superpower. According to Ray Dalio, one of the key reasons for this fragmentation is the shift in economic power. For much of the 20th and early 21st centuries, the United States maintained its dominance through financial strength, military superiority, and technological innovation. However, China's rapid economic growth, industrial expansion, and increasing global influence have eroded the US's uncontested supremacy. With China now the world's largest economy in purchasing power parity (PPP) terms, its growing financial and technological independence threatens to weaken the US-led global order. Ray Dalio also highlights the weakening of US-led global institutions. Since World War II, organizations such as the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund (IMF), and the World Trade Organization (WTO) have functioned largely under American influence. However, as geopolitical tensions rise, countries like China and Russia are actively working to establish parallel institutions that reduce reliance on Western-led systems. The creation of alternative financial structures, such as China's cross-border interbank payment system, CIPS, and the growing use of non-dollar trade agreements, signals a shift toward a more multipolar world. Another critical factor contributing to fragmentation is the deterioration of US-China relations and the broader trend of geopolitical polarization. The rivalry between the two superpowers has expanded beyond trade disputes into military confrontations. As the global landscape shifts, Ray Dalio suggests that the world is entering a period of decentralization, where regional powers such as China, India, Russia, and the European Union will play more significant roles in shaping global affairs. Instead of a unipolar world dominated by the US, he envisions a fragmented geopolitical order where different blocs compete for influence, resources, and economic leadership.
You're going to have more strong-armed conflict, a much more muscular power and testing of powers and getting around that. You're going to have much less following the United States. It wasn't long ago that the United States only had to hint at some countries what it wanted, and they would get the message, and they'd probably pretty much fall in line because that was the order and also the power of the United States. Now that's no longer the case. And so you're going to see a more fragmented policy in which most countries are interested in what's good for them and how do they pursue that. So you're going to see some countries align with one side or the other, and most countries in the world not align and do deals. And so that will be a much more fragmented type of policy. So yes, BRICS will rise. BRICS countries, which are, let's call them the non-aligned countries, generally speaking, although part of that is China and Russia. That's part of the BRICS, part of that. But it is the non-US dominated, non-G7, non-European countries that are creating this alternative. Now, what that'll be is they are not all in agreement with everything, but they do think they have one thing in common, and that is to get out from under the American system or to be controlled by the United States. So that lends itself to doing those things that'll reduce their control, such as developing an alternative medium of exchange and perhaps an alternative storehold of wealth. I don't think they're going to develop an alternative storehold of wealth, but I do think we have our storehold of wealth, which is treasury bonds or bonds. We're going to have problems with that. So anyway, it is that alternative organization that is not the US-dominated world order. That also, by the way, constitutes about 85% of the world's population and now counts. Yeah. And so you're going to see a shift in that direction. The idea of the United States dominating and being so controlling is no longer going to be the case. It'll be a power. It'll certainly be a great power, but it's BRICS each pursuing their own interest in deals in a more interesting, in a more independent way is part of it. They do not, the world sees it differently. The United States sees it in the way I just described. In other words, there's internal, how do I control the internal? And then how do I deal in an America first policy with the outside world? The most of the world says, I don't want to get involved in your fights and your arguments. I don't care what you want. You're pursuing your self-interest. And instead, I have my own developmental issues, and I'm not going to follow in the same way. That's the characterization of what it is like in the world.
He's threatened to do 20% across the board tariffs. How does that play out domestically? Does it isolate us from the rest of the world and end up putting us in a position where we can no longer export our inflation, and that becomes a dramatic problem for our debt and the value of the dollar? Or is this the posture that needs to be struck right now so that we can re-solidify, bring manufacturing back on board, get the dollar strong? How does this play out?
Think of it as operating as two different systems. And so you're going to have two different technologies in the world, for example. There's going to be a China-based technology, there's going to be an American-based technology, and there'll be two separate technologies.
And the technology is how they're handling their economy?
No, I'm referring just to, this AI, all of those technologies, because they are a threat to each other. And
so they're going to stop doing global trade.
And nobody wants to trust what's in here. So and they need self-sufficiency. If you're in a war, you can't be dependent on parts or things that are going to come in from other places that could be shut off. So you're going to have this, you're going to see a lot more conflict, and you're going to see a lot more economic independence. That is going to undermine efficiency, but benefit self-sufficiency. Okay. So the goal is in 2030 to have 20% of the key chips be able to be produced within the United States. But think about them. They're being produced in Taiwan, which has this geopolitical thing going on, and that's a scary thought. So you're going to see that. You're going to see then the support in an industrial policy for enabling that. So there'll be protectionism, there will be tariffs. Certainly those ideas that stuff coming in will make it more expensive, because you no longer could go to the world supermarket and buy whatever is most cost effective for you. But it will at the same time develop those industries. This was very much like Germany after World War I, or Japan. This is very much a policy that is a more autocratic, controlling the economy, directing it to be self-sufficient with protectionism and so on. So that will be stimulating to those businesses. We have a number of businesses which are not their national champions, but they may not be the most efficient. Problem. The main, where are we going to get it? So you will see foreigners coming to produce within the United States. But it was going to be much more focused within the United States to make it more capable, more profitable, and more independent. So that's what that piece is going to look like.
The trade tensions between the United States and China have escalated recently, with both nations imposing tariffs on each other's goods. The U.S. has implemented a 10% tariff on Chinese products, while China has retaliated by imposing additional tariffs of 15% on U.S. coal and natural gas and 10% on U.S. oil. This tit-for-tat escalation has led to increased uncertainty in global markets, affecting trade flows and economic stability. Trump has justified the tariffs as being necessary to balance the trade deficits and punishment for the free flow of fentanyl into the United States. However, economists warn that the consequences may be far greater than the benefits. Do you agree with their assertion, or do you believe tariffs are a necessary negotiating tool for the United States? Please share your thoughts, comments, and observations in the comments section below. Also, ensure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notifications bell for more videos like this. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you in the next one.